Alright, what I wanted to do is I wanted to go over some graphic settings. It's going to be different for everyone's hardware setup, but just wanted to show you some differences that I see with my setup anyways. I am running a 5900X for the CPU. The GPU is an RTX 3080. So it's a little bit older, but it's still an excellent card. 32 gigs of RAM. And I like to do these graphics with Sharon because I've got her in that all chrome outfit. Okay. So let's start with taking all the graphics down to the bottom. Go low, and we'll take ray tracing off. DLSS off. Just leave everything off. We'll leave the latency on though. Okay, look how. I mean, it's not horrible. It's just terrible. So you can see how grainy things are. The texture of the water is not very smooth. Something that's weird. Look at this. The way that the bushes and the trees have their textures, they have this sort of flat cross-section look to them. Yeah. Okay. Everything looks pretty grainy. Just for fun, let's just go through the ray tracing first. I'll turn ray tracing up to medium, from off to medium. Still has that cross section. That cross section will actually go away once you get to medium graphics settings. But the ray tracing is really just going to be dealing with light. So I'm just going to leave the screen right here. There's medium ray tracing. Bump it up to high. And high is where I like to have it. I'll just leave it here for a second. There's still some funny things happening, but that's going to be mostly caused from the low graphics settings. So we'll bump it up again to ultra. Okay, there we go. And the lighting is better, but honestly, if the graphics aren't high enough, the lighting almost really just doesn't matter, in my opinion. Cinematic lighting, okay, the lighting looks great. Still going to have these cross-section trees, funny textures, funny things going on. Okay, so let's take ray tracing back to off and bump the graphics up to medium. On medium, you still have this cross-section, trees and bushes. The water's better. It's going to be progressively better. You'll just see. I'll just run through and let you see it. Looking at the texture of Sharon's leg there and that chrome. Look how almost burnished it looks. Alright. Let's bump the graphics up to high. I'm going to run through the ray tracing again on high and let you see the difference. Alright, so now with the graphics on high, you can see the cross-section on the tree is gone. Cross-section on the bushes over here is gone. It looks a lot better. There's still a little bit of texture in those leaves where there shouldn't be texture. But now watch this. Let's bump the ray tracing up Let's just start with medium. Okay, texture's still there. Oh, that's better. You can see it really good right there. In that upper leaf. Okay. Lighting is better. Let's bump ray tracing to high. Not much of a difference. Let's go to ultra. I almost think that's worse. Cinematic. Alright, now watch what happens if we turn DLSS is really just going to deal with the smoothness of it. Ray construction. I should be able to turn that on once DLAA is on. I'll go through this in a minute, but I prefer to have this on balanced, and I'll show you why in a bit. Alright, ray construction on. That really smoothed out her hair a lot. And her legs, look how much smoother that is. It's a huge difference. The leaves still have this funny texture in them though, so let's fix that. I'm going to take ray tracing down to high. Going to bump graphics up to ultra. Needs to load in all the textures. There. Look how much better that is. So much better. The reflections in the armor. The water's smoother. Now where I like to have it, I like to have, and if you want to go for great graphics, I go to cinematic. Ray tracing, I like on high. Once it gets on my setup, once it gets above that, it starts doing funny things. Now you can see that sort of mesh over the leaves there again. That's from the ray tracing. So let's bump that back down to high. Textures load in. Okay. There we go. That's the sweet spot for my system. Now, okay, let me show you something. The frames are a little jumpy. I don't know why my FPS counter is not working right now, but I'll get that fixed for the future. But the frames are a little jumpy. Actually, quite a bit jumpy. It's pretty bad. So the DLSS is going to help me fix that. If you go to quality, it's a little bit better. Now pay attention to the hair though. So the hair looks fine right now. But if we go kind of drastic here, if we jump to ultra performance, this is supposed to make it really smooth. So you've got higher frame rates. But if we do that, it's super smooth. But her hair is almost just blurry. And the armor has some funny texture to it. The armor is actually not that bad. It's really mostly her hair that bothers me in this setting. I like to have it unbalanced. It gives me good quality and it gives good frame rates. So I'm going to put it there. The hair has got a bit more texture to it. I think everything just looks cleaner here. It's better quality. It's still really smooth. One of the tests that I actually like to do with the DLSS, if you want to mess around with your settings, is let's just do a jump. Look at how smooth the jump is. Okay, now if we go back to, if we say DLAA, you can almost you can almost count the frame rates. It's terrible. If we go to ultra performance, that hair is just awful. It's a lot smoother, but that hair just bugs me. Back to balanced is where I like it. Kind of the best of both worlds. It's smooth, better textures. Things look great. All right. Now the other thing I was going to show you is that cinematic and high. Let's see. What was the other thing I was going to show you? Maybe I already went through it all. I went through the graphics, ray tracing, DLSS. Those were kind of the main things I wanted to show you. Now that's specific to my setup, of course. It's NVIDIA. I don't have AMD, and I don't mess around with those other ones. You can if you want. That's just kind of the how I found the sweet spot for my system. Now you can change all of these to make things better or worse, fine tune it. But if your system can do cinematic and you can get smooth frames, and if you're happy with the way everything looks, I don't see any reason why you'd want to change any of this. But if you can't quite hit cinematic, turn down a few things. Maybe visibility, turn that down a little bit. Maybe anti-aliasing I like to leave up. It is a rather power-hungry process, but I really think the smoothness goes a long way when you're playing these kinds of games. Post-processing you could probably take down a step. Shadows you can take down a step. There doesn't seem to be a huge difference between high and cinematic, for example. There is a difference, of course, but when you're trying to get some better frame rates, I think that you'll appreciate the frames over the small amount of improvement in the shadows. Global illumination, I think everything could go down a little bit, but play around with it, find out what gets the sweet spot for your system. That's it for mine. All right, so now that we are here, I showed you the graphic settings I wanted to go through. I wanted to talk about Nell for a bit, so let's just jump out of this for just a second. Let me just change the display so I can just shrink that down. Okay, so Nell, we get to preview her and Axion in, what is that going to be? About 8 hours from now. So I will be on again. I will be playing with Nell. jumping into Axion, checking out the hover bikes. There's supposed to be some skins coming out tomorrow. I'm guessing there'll be all the skins that have to do with the summer theme. We'll probably get all the short skins. I don't think, and I'm just speculating, I don't think we'll get the racing suits until August 7th. But we'll see. We'll find out in 8 hours. Alright, so I want to go over these slides that I built. I got all the information from the stream, from the live dev stream that a lot of us have watched. Some of these slides were hard to read, whether it was just they never zoomed in on it or whatever the case was. Now, there's going to have been a hot topic between what RK goes to what ability. On the stream, they had their, sort of presentational icon for each ability, and they marked it with the RK type. They didn't match up with what they had written on their spec sheets. So I wrote it up this way, with the passive being tech, skill 1 is tech, skill 2 is fusion, skill 3 is fusion, skill 4 is tech. I think that they had on their little icons, they had switched the tech, the RK on skill 3 and 4. So it was tech for skill 3 and fusion for skill 4. But like I said, I'm modeling this after their spec sheets, which I think are going to be the correct ones. All the videos I've seen out there have switched it around the other way. I think that I might be the only one going this direction. And of course, I think I'm right. But we will find out in just a few hours. So, to get that out of the way, these may be different from what everyone else is talking about, and it probably is. There's at least one video out there that have used my slides, and they used the first draft of the slide, which had some incorrect information under the basic info for the passive. It had the same basic info as skill 3, I think. The cooldown's the same, but the passive doesn't have any of that extra info. So this is the correct slide. This is the most up to date. I have updated these on the Facebook posts in the first Descendant HQ, lounge posting, and I believe it's on United as well. So let's just go through these real fast. Some of you already know about this. Some of you haven't heard about it yet. So I'm not going to do the videos. I'm not a huge video editor. I used to be a long time ago, but I'm tired of that. So if you want videos, I'm sure there will be some other ones soon, or just watch a live dev stream. But I'm just going to talk about it here. So Suspicion and Insight is Nell's passive ability. It's a non-attribute tech. And using your Sieve will inflict a Sieve scan on enemies in front of you. Attacking enemies inflicted with the Sieve scan deals additional damage. Now that should be listed here. The Sieve scan lasts 9 seconds. Can target 8. The Sieve scan target increase is the caster's range plus 40% each. I'm not sure what this really means, but we'll find out more. I will be streaming and recording once the demo opens up and I can get in. So we will find out more information about this. The damage is going to be the skill power times 100%. I'm not sure if that's specifically the passive skill power, the tech skill power, or if that's going to be the skill power of whatever skill you're using on them, on those targets. I'm not sure. Cooldown's 0.1 second. Super fast. You can spam that one. I'll just continue on the description here. Enemies under the reticle are guaranteed to be inflicted. If the reticle is on a weak point of a Colossus, the sieve scan is applied to that weak point. The efficiency increases when disarming encrypted vaults, and rewards increase when decryption is complete. That's just like Enzo. That's going to be the same as Enzo. So that one's self-explanatory. If you've never used Enzo, basically those encrypted vaults that look like mummies, they're in various locations. When you use a regular Descendant to decrypt that, the puzzle's a bit more challenging. When you're using Enzo or soon to be Nell, that challenge is so much reduced. There will be fewer things you have to click on. There will be a much wider range to click inside, so it's easier to hit it. And the penalties will be reduced as well. So if you miss one, the penalty is not going to be as bad. On top of that, when you successfully unlock one, you will have more resources given to you when you complete it. Okay, so moving on to the first skill, Breach Discharge, non-attribute tech. Fires a barrage of breach shards, dealing damage to hit enemies. If the enemy hit is inflicted with a sieve scan, which with that cooldown they really should be, an additional effect is triggered. So maximum stacks is 2, stack cooldowns 13 seconds, MP cost 15, damage is skill power times 500%. So let's say just real fast, for example, if you have a maxed out non-attribute tech reactor with your 160% equipped weapon bonus, you should be hitting close to like 33,000 skill power. So imagine that 33,000 times 5, whatever that's going to be, 17,000, but it's 100%, so, or 170,000 times 100. Anyways, we'll see real numbers when it comes out, but that's going to be a lot. Default projectile count's only 3 though, so that's okay, good damage, but it's only going to be hitting 3 targets it looks like. Fire intervals 0.15 seconds. I'm not sure how that's going to work yet. Fire interval. It's not how often you can use it. I wonder if that's like a fire element, if it has burning damage. Projectile speed increase, nothing. Okay. On hit of a sieve scan target, does 100% additional damage. This is kind of neat. The Abyssal Gaze, the skill 4, will has a cooldown reduction of 0.25 seconds. Scan, that's on scan target, so I'm guessing that might be per target hit. Burst damage is skill power times 200. Explosion damage range, radius 3 meters. Max expandable range 200%. So you can have a max of 6 meters. Right. So this is on top of your projectile damage. Alright, let's move on to skill 2. Ring of Breach is a non-attribute fusion. Creates an arcade breach at a designated location. Inflicts a debuff on enemies near the created arcade breach and spawns a gravitic reversal field on the ground. The debuff of the arcade breach intensifies over time and further weakens adaptive defense. Reusing the skill retrieves the arcade breach. On retrieval, the gravitic reversal field disappears, dealing explosion damage to the area around it and refunding a portion of the cooldown. I kind of think about Blair on this when he's got fields of fire on the ground, and then you hit your other skill to retrieve that fire, and it refunds some of your MP. So not necessarily the cooldown, but the MP. So that's interesting. All right, so like a damage over time. So it's a normal area of effect, slow install, weaken. It's like a damage over time with the intensity over time. Cooldown's 30 seconds, MP cost 28. Max stack of 5. So once you hit the ground with this, it can stack up to 5 times movement speed reduction and incoming weak point damage per stack. So with 5 stacks, they'll be moving at 50% speed. They will gain 35% weak point damage. And then each stack happens every half second. The duration is 15 seconds. The range is 6 meters. Max expandable range, you can go up to 18 meter radius at 300%. That's a 36 meter diameter. That's pretty big. That's huge. Okay, so you're going to slow everyone down, and they'll take extra weak point damage. So the anti-gravity filled, and this is... Oh, so it also does damage. So the continuous damage is skill power times 150%, so not as strong as breach discharge. Damage interval is every half second, and duration is 15 seconds. So it'll actually hit over 15 seconds. It'll hit 30 times. So that's actually not bad. And again, it's a huge range, 6 meter radius, expandable up to 18 meter radius. And then when you retrieve it, the cooldown reduction when the skill ends is 90%, so you'll almost be able to spam it right away. Now these things are going to be really neat adding into the Gaze of the Abyss when we get there, so I might jump back and forth a little bit when we get there. Skill 3, the Gravitic Reversal, is a non-attribute fusion. It detonates an RK breach, that's skill 2, causing a Gravitic Reversal. This pulls in enemies near the RK breach and deals explosion damage, so I think Lepic, when he's got that gravity grenade, pulls everyone in and blows up. Cooldown is 30 seconds, MP cost is 34, burst damage is skill power times 2100%. That's huge. Explosion damage range, radius 6 meters, max expandable range 300%. So again, up to an 18 meter radius is 36 meter diameter with skill power times 2100%. So what is that? Let's say if they had 33,000 skill power times 2100% is like times you get 210 times. That's going to be pretty close to 7 million damage. Now, let's jump back to the passive. If they are hit with the Deceive scan, the damage is going to be skill power times 100%. So I'm not sure if that just means plus the skill power, say 33,000, which isn't that great, or if it means we're going to double it. I don't think it's going to double it, but if it did, it'd be 14 million damage, which is high, but it's not crazy. We've seen other Descendants do more. Alright. We will find out more when we have her in our hands. Skill 4, Gaze of the Abyss, is a non-attribute tech. This grants Gaze of the Abyss. All firearm attacks from Nell target weak points, increasing the weak point damage of herself and nearby allies. While Gaze of the Abyss is active, hitting a target inflicted with a Deceive scan with a Breach Shard, that's skill 1, increases the duration of Gaze of the Abyss. So it's a 110-second cooldown, which is similar to... I can't remember off the top of my head. I saw it the other day. There are a few Descendants that have a very long skill 4 cooldown, so this is similar. MP cost is 50. Duration of the gaze is 8 seconds. Weak point damage increase is 35%. So that's just like the Ring of Breach, skill 2. If it were on and had max stacks, it would be a 35% weak point damage increase. The difference with Nell is that every firearm attack is a weak point hit. That is going to be huge with a gunning build for her. So with the allies, though, it doesn't change their hits into weak point damage, but it increases weak point damage for her allies. So that's just something to keep in mind. The allies don't get to just hit body shots and get weak point damage. They still need to hit the weak points, but they all get a 35% weak point damage increase. On hit of a sieve scanned target with breach shard, so this is once you've used Gaze of the Abyss, and then you use skill 1, breach discharge, the abyssal gaze skill duration increases 0.3 seconds. And that's per target. So if we just go back real fast to breach discharge, there are 3 projectiles. And I thought I read somewhere that you can increase, that increases somewhere. The max abyssal gaze skill duration increase is 30 seconds. So I guess this can still stack. So if you've got your cooldown down, you can hit this. What are they saying? Hit them 100 times to get 30 seconds. On hit of a sieve scan target with breach shard. I'm not sure how that one will work. I don't know how you can get a 30-second increase. Unless hitting them again resets the timer and your breach discharge cooldown is fast enough, you can keep hitting them over and over and over, then it could be possible. And what that's going to do, though, is that's going to keep the buff up for Nell and her allies to be getting that extra weak point damage. So, there's a lot to think about with that. Now, I'm not going to talk about the Transcendent modules for her. We know that there are 2 of them, and we know kind of what they do, but we don't really know number-wise what they do. We don't know specs or stats, so I'm not going to talk about those right now. Something else I wanted to bring up, I did have this sort of guesstimation, I guess, of how I'm going to start building Nell once I get her. And from what I understand, we won't be able to build her in the demo. We'll just be able to use her with a pre-built set, I think. If I'm wrong, I'm totally going to try some of these builds out. Now, we don't know what her crit is really like. I know someone has mentioned that they think she's not going to be crit just because in the stream it didn't seem like she was getting a lot of crits, but we don't really know what that means. It just may have been the way that they had her built, so there's a lot that could go into that that we don't know about. So I'm guessing if there's a crit build possible, she has a decent or non-zero crit rate that we can play off of, then I think we go a direction similar to this for a crit build. I'm going to start with a no crit skill spam though, because this one I think is one of the more interesting ones for me. I think there's one of 2 ways you can really go with Nell, whether you're going to use skills a lot or guns a lot. Of course, there's going to be a middle ground, but I'm just going to look at extremes today. So with a no crit skill spam, we're just going to be pummeling the enemy with basically two skills 1, 2, and 3. So I think, and the Asive, of course. Always use the Asive. It's basically free. It doesn't cost anything. There's that small cooldown. Just scan every chance you get. And then we're going to jump right into skill 2, which, let me pull that back up real fast. Skill 2. The Ring of Breach. So this is going to create that big area on the ground that's going to stack up to slow enemies down 50% and increase weak point damage up to 35%. So let's go back to this real fast. So once you have the enemy to that point, they are primed for more damage. So after they're in that, and even while that's stacking up, you can hit them with guns or whatever. I think towards the end of the cooldown, after you've hit them with guns, and this could be part of that half and half build, skill and gun. But once they're there, or you can use her skill 1 to hit them with shards while this is stacking up. Now at the end of the stack, instead of retrieving it, I think what I will do, and you can do this however you want, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use skill 3, and I'm going to recall that, and what this will do is it'll create that gravitic reversal. It'll pull everyone into a center point. And now once everyone is there, you hit her first skill, which is the breach shards, and you just spam that one. It's going to be a super fast cooldown if you build the cooldown, and that's why I call this the no crit skill spam. So get cooldowns way down low so that once you've got them all pulled in, you can just spam one on them over and over and over and over. And it's not the most damage, but it will still deal a decent amount of damage. And then basically rinse and repeat. You could even throw in a 4 in there if you wanted to, just to increase weak point damage. But mainly this is going to be skill based. We're going to be increasing the skill power a lot more, so the damage should be pretty good. I think there probably is a better module than Dangerous Ambush, but I think I need to play around with stuff to really figure that out. The crit build is basically going to be the same thing, except you're going to be using modules that deal a lot more with the skill crit rate and crit damage, of course. It won't be quite as spammy, but it should hit harder, especially if she does have some amount of crit, because then those numbers are going to be huge. So it's still a possibility. I'm not taking it off the table. Going down to the gun build real fast. This is going to be similar to a lot of other gun builds. Think Serena's gun build. Basically, we're just going to set this up with the Asive. We're going to lay out the Ring of the Breach to increase the weak point damage. You may or may not use 3. If you do use the gravitic reversal, pulls everyone to the center. Either hit them or use 4 and then hit them with 1 to increase the duration of 4, and then just fire away. With 4 on there, that's going to make every shot from Nell a weak point hit and increase weak point damage for nearby allies. Now the other way you could use the gun build is if you use the Asive and you use the Ring of Breach, but don't use the gravitic reversal. Leave the Ring of Breach on there while you apply the fourth one, the Abyssal Gaze, because I believe those weak point damages will stack, and that will be a huge buff for Nell with a gun. Now, quickly going into the reactors, um, there's a few different ways. I'm not sure which way is going to be the best, not until I get some hands-on, but I think that a fusion's cooldown is going to be one of the better ones. I chose fusion because her second and third skills are fusion. The third skill is the skill power times 2,100%. So that's going to be a good one for dealing high damage. So this is definitely going to be a skill-based reactor. I believe the Gaze of the Abyss, being tech, doesn't have a skill-based damage increase. Has skill duration, but not damage. And so I think even with the gun build, I will still stay fusion and not tech. I think that is still the better way. As far as the second one goes, you can go non-attribute for more power for skills or a cooldown for skills. I think a cooldown is going to be more valuable, but time will tell. You can also play around with range and duration. I think duration is going to be pretty easy built in with the modules and with the skills themselves. I think that you're going to be better off with a cooldown here. Maybe a range if you really want to go with a mobbing style. I think that may be more beneficial to get a bigger area. All right, for external components, there's so many different ways I think this one can go, and I'm not sure which way would be the best. So what I'm going to try first, I should say, is going to be Ascending, Armory, and Hunter. That is going to give us, let me jump back into here. Let's see. I think what's going to be beneficial on this, I just want to go over the components. Let's just do this. All right. Components wise, Ascending Armory, with 2 of them slotted, you'll get a decrease in skill cost, which I think is going to be useful if you're going to be doing skill spams. If you're using the gun build, this may not be quite as important. So, maybe go Slayer instead with that gun build. Even a 4-set Slayer, I think, could be useful with the extra rounds for magazine. It is going to be an increase in cost, but there's an increase in power. So that could be viable. A four-piece Slayer set with Nell's gun build. Skill builds, I think definitely probably Ascending Armor to get a decreased skill cost. And the other set was Hunter with a decrease in skill cooldown. So I think that one will be better for the skill builds. Other options, I think Invader with the increase in range could be really neat. Even a 4-set with the extra duration when defeating an enemy, that could be a really good mobbing set for her. It's got increased tech skill power, which would be better if it was fusion, but that one might be interesting to check out. Let's see, another one I was thinking of, with Ascending Armory, I was thinking Shell Crusher might be interesting. So you'll have a decreased cost, and you might do something besides Ascending Armory. Shell Crusher will give you an increased fire rate. That could be very useful for the gun build. Was I looking at Invader? Range? No, probably not. And I don't even think you'll need to do more cooldown if you're doing the gun build. I think there'll be plenty enough time with the modules you have to decrease that cooldown. You may not even need this, but maybe. Hunter shell could be useful. I wouldn't go a full shell. I don't see any point in having 4 pieces. Slayer, obviously useful. Mix and match. Let's see. I was thinking Enlightened Mage would be useful. So you get increase in skill power. So firearm decrease. But you get up to 3 stacks of non-attribute skill truth, which gives you non-attribute skill power of plus 84%. So the Enlightened Mage could be a very useful skill set or component set for Nell's skill builds. Firebrand would be interesting with increased range and duration for skills. I really feel like Nell's just going to be so versatile. You can do so many things with her, and I think she's going to be a ton of fun. Reactor-wise, just collect whatever you can. I've got non-attribute tech, attack cost and cooldown, cost and duration, tech and cooldown. I grabbed the sub-attack cooldown. I'm not sure if the sub-attack is going to come into play with the swords, but that's not coming until... What was swords? I can't remember. October or November. I've got the number somewhere. For the materialized mixture reactors, so these are fusion-based. I've got fusion and cooldown, fusion and non-attribute, sub-attack again with an HP heal modifier. I don't know how squishy she's going to be. We'll find out. Fusion and cost, sub-attack and crit damage. Maybe that might be interesting with the swords. I'm not sure. Fusion cost and cooldown, Legion of Darkness, crit rate. We'll see. I might not even use that. Crit rate, crit damage. Maybe if she's got a good crit base, this could be awesome. But I feel like the non-attribute fusion, if you're going for a skill nuker, I think may still be better. Maybe a fusion crit damage, but I don't have one of those right now. I think a fusion crit damage could be really useful. Okay, so not sure. Oh, guns. So I had some interesting ideas for the guns. There's gonna be a lot of different things to try, but something I thought about with Axion, with the new hordes being adaptable to element damage. I know in the stream they talked about, go with friends that deal different damage, or take different guns that do different damage. I thought about the final masterpiece. It changes elemental damage every time you reload. I just wondered how that would play into the mechanics of Axion. Like, would it just confuse them with their respawns? Or I don't know how that would work. If that's gonna be fun to try out. That's something I'm gonna try out probably almost right away. It might not be the first thing, but definitely one of the early things I do is to see what happens if you hit those hordes with tons of different elements and see what they throw back at you. Peacemaker, I think, is going to be good. Obvious reasons. It's being used already. It's got 3 with its open core slots. You can have up to 3 speed or 2 speed and a grapple. So this is going to help increase her speed. Obviously, you want to be able to move around. The Malevolent is a toxic element by default, but you can pretty easily throw in different mods to give it different elements, different cores. I'm not sure how this would work yet, but if you have toxic damage on it, if you use an inversion setting for fire, for example, it has a chill core and say an ice enhancement on it. So that's there's another instance of I wonder what's going to happen if we hit the new Legions of the Breach with all elements. What are they going to throw back at you? I think I'm definitely going to be using the new Scout Rifle. The idea of it sounds really cool, so could be really useful in Axion. I'm not sure. I don't feel like Scout Rifles really do a lot of firearm damage, but it's supposed to have resistance neutralization. I'm not sure if that's a debuff, so you can hit it with other stuff, or how that's going to work. The new rocket pod or the new rocket launcher is supposed to be really useful for taking out the spawn sacks. So that'll probably be a given must have. But at the same time, there are a lot of things in game that use a quote unquote specific gun. But say, for example, whatever gun we have is built up so much that it just destroys everything anyways. So we'll see how that goes. Axion is supposed to be a lot harder. I don't know if we have to tailor to that more specifically with a gun, which I kind of hope not, because I don't want to be locked into having to use a single type of gun or even two specific guns to get through Axion. I want to be able to use whatever gun I want as long as I build it right. So that's pretty much all I had for her, thought-wise of how to build her. Now, like I said, I'm not sure if we get to build her right away after tonight's patch, or if we still have to wait till August 7th. I feel like we're just going to get a pre-built system to use Nell with in the demo, and we won't really get into this stuff until the 7th. But we'll see. Time will tell.